I married the perfect man for all the wrong reasons, and it took 12 years for the truth to destroy us both. Everyone said we were soulmates, high school sweethearts who beat the odds, stayed together through college, got married at 24 with our whole lives ahead of us. Daniel was everything anyone could want: kind, stable, successful, devoted. He loved me with a completeness that should have made me feel lucky. Instead, it made me feel trapped, because the truth I carried like a stone in my chest was this: I never loved him the way he loved me, not even close. I married him because he was safe, because saying yes was easier than breaking his heart, because I was terrified of ending up alone. And for 12 years, I lived that lie, until the day I met someone who made me feel what love was supposed to feel like, and everything I'd carefully constructed came crashing down. My name is Claire, and this is my confession. Daniel and I met when I was 16. He was the new kid at school, transferred in junior year from somewhere in Ohio. Quiet, bookish, the kind of guy who kept his head down and didn't try to impress anyone. I noticed him because he sat behind me in AP English and would lend me his notes when I zoned out during lectures about symbolism and Shakespeare. We became friends first, study partners. He made me laugh with his dry observations about our classmates, helped me pass calculus, listened when I complained about my parents' divorce. When he asked me to prom at the end of junior year, I said yes because it seemed like the natural progression of things. We were already spending all our time together anyway. The kiss at the end of the night was nice, sweet. When he asked if I wanted to be his girlfriend, I said yes again. And just like that, we were Daniel and Claire, a unit, a couple everyone assumed would last forever. Here's what I remember about falling in love with Daniel. I don't. There was no moment of realization, no butterflies, no overwhelming certainty that he was the one. It was comfortable and easy, and everyone told me how lucky I was to have found such a great guy so young. My friends were jealous. My mom adored him. His parents treated me like the daughter they'd always wanted. So I stayed. Through senior year, through college, we went to different schools but made it work with weekend visits and constant texting. Through graduation, when he proposed in front of both our families at his parents' anniversary party, everyone cried. I said yes, because what else was I going to say? The wedding was beautiful. I looked at photos of myself in that white dress, smiling at the camera, and I looked happy. Maybe I was happy, in a distant sort of way. Or maybe I was just good at performing the role of the blushing bride, the girl who'd found her forever person at 16 and never looked back. Our marriage was fine. Daniel got a job as an engineer at a tech company. I worked as a graphic designer at a small marketing agency. We bought a house in the suburbs, got a dog, hosted dinner parties. We had date nights and inside jokes and a sex life that was perfectly adequate, if not particularly exciting. We were building the life we were supposed to build, checking off all the boxes that society tells you equal happiness. But I wasn't happy. I was numb, going through the motions, playing house with a man who deserved someone who loved him with passion and fire and certainty, and instead got me, a woman who felt more like his roommate than his wife. The guilt was constant, because Daniel was good to me. He remembered my coffee order, rubbed my feet after long days at work, supported my career even when it meant eating takeout for the third night in a row because I was on deadline. He told me he loved me every single day, and I said it back. Those 3 words I'd said so many times they'd lost all meaning. I love you. The biggest lie I'd ever told. I tried to make it true. I really did. I'd look at him reading on the couch or working in his home office and try to summon the feelings I was supposed to have. I'd remind myself of all his good qualities, all the reasons any rational person would be grateful to be married to him. I'd think about friends whose husbands were jerks or cheaters or absent fathers and tell myself I had no right to complain about a man who was present and faithful and kind. But you can't logic yourself into love. You can't manufacture passion through gratitude. And by our 10th anniversary, I was so hollow inside, I could barely recognize myself anymore. That's when I met Adrian. The agency hired him as creative director in March. He was 38, recently moved to Chicago from New York, with the kind of restless energy that made every room feel too small to contain him. He had ideas and opinions and wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo. Our first meeting, he tore apart a campaign I'd spent weeks developing, pointing out every flaw and missed opportunity with brutal efficiency. I should have hated him. Instead, I found myself staying late to redo the work, wanting to prove I could meet his standards, wanting to impress him in a way I hadn't wanted to impress anyone in years. We started having lunch together. Just work stuff at first, discussing projects, bouncing around concepts, but gradually the conversations became more personal. He told me about his divorce 2 years prior, how he'd married young to someone he'd outgrown, how the end had been messy and painful but necessary. I told him about my work, my creative frustrations, the feeling that I was capable of more than I was producing. I didn't tell him about Daniel, not at first. I'd mention my husband in passing, keep it vague and impersonal. But I didn't talk about our relationship, didn't share the details of our life together. It felt too private. Or maybe I was already protecting whatever was developing between Adrian and me, keeping it separate from my marriage. The first time I realized I was attracted to him was during a late-night work session. We were alone in the office, finalizing a pitch for a major client, and he was standing close behind me, looking at something on my computer screen. I could smell his cologne, feel the warmth of him, and every nerve in my body suddenly lit up with an awareness I hadn't felt in years. I made an excuse to move away, to put distance between us, but the damage was done. I couldn't unsee it, couldn't unfeel it. This was what attraction was supposed to feel like. This wanting, this electricity, this heightened awareness of another person's presence. And I'd never felt it with Daniel, not once in our entire relationship. The realization hit me like a truck. I went home that night and looked at my husband. Sweet, stable Daniel, who was doing dishes and asking about my day, and felt a wave of grief so profound I had to lock myself in the bathroom until I could compose myself. I didn't love him. I'd never loved him. Not the way he deserved. Not the way I should have. And now, at 34 years old, I was finally understanding what I'd missed, what I'd settled for, what I'd denied both of us by staying in a relationship that was comfortable but ultimately empty. I could have ended it there, should have ended it there, gone home and had the hard conversation with Daniel about how we'd grown apart, how I needed something different, how this wasn't working for me anymore. It would have been painful but honest, clean. Instead, I did the worst thing possible. I let myself fall for Adrian. It happened gradually, then all at once. Lunches turned into dinners. Work conversations turned into personal confessions. We started texting outside of work hours, sharing music recommendations and articles and the kind of intimate details you share with someone who's becoming important to you. I told myself we were just friends, that I could have this connection, this spark, without it meaning anything, that I was still faithful to my marriage as long as we didn't cross any physical lines. But emotional infidelity is still infidelity, and I was deep in it before I admitted what I was doing. Daniel noticed something was different. "You seem happier lately," he said one evening. "Something good happening at work?" "Just a new project I'm excited about," I lied, which wasn't entirely false. I was excited about work, because work meant Adrian. "That's great, babe. You should invite your team over for dinner sometime. I'd love to meet everyone." The thought of Adrian in our house, sitting at our table, meeting Daniel, it made my stomach turn. These were separate worlds that couldn't be allowed to intersect. "Maybe," I said non-committally. "Everyone's pretty busy right now." I was lying to my husband daily about where I was, who I was with, why I was coming home late, small lies that accumulated into something massive and ugly. And the worst part, I didn't feel as guilty as I should have, because being with Adrian made me feel alive in a way I'd never experienced, and I was too selfish to give that up. The first time Adrian kissed me, we were in his car after a client dinner. We'd had wine, were laughing about something stupid, and then suddenly, we weren't laughing anymore. We were just looking at each other, and I could see the question in his eyes, the same want I was feeling reflected back at me. I should have pulled away, should have said this was a mistake, that I was married, that we couldn't do this. Instead, I kissed him back. It was everything my marriage wasn't. Passionate, consuming, electric. When we finally broke apart, I was shaking. "Claire," he said, and just hearing my name in his voice made my chest ache. I know you're married. I know this is complicated, but I can't pretend anymore that I don't have feelings for you. Adrian, you don't have to say anything right now. I just needed you to know. He touched my face gently. I think you feel it too, this connection. Tell me I'm not crazy. You're not crazy, I whispered. I feel it too. We sat there in the parking garage and I made a choice. Not consciously, not deliberately, but a choice nonetheless. I didn't get out of the car, didn't go home to my husband, didn't end whatever this was before it went any further. Instead, I went home with Adrian that night, and I crossed a line I could never uncross. The affair lasted 4 months. 4 months of stolen moments and elaborate lies, of telling Daniel I was working late or out with colleagues while I was actually in Adrian's bed, of living 2 completely separate lives and somehow managing to keep them from colliding. Being with Adrian was like breathing after years of suffocation. He saw me in a way Daniel never had. We'd talk for hours about art and creativity and dreams. He challenged me, pushed me to take risks in my work, made me feel capable and talented and alive. And the physical connection was unlike anything I'd experienced. Every time felt urgent and necessary, like we were trying to make up for lost time. But the guilt was eating me alive. I'd look at Daniel across the dinner table. Daniel, who trusted me completely, who had no idea his wife was betraying him, and want to die. I'd see him doing laundry, or taking out the trash, or doing all the small domestic things that make up a life together, and I'd feel like a monster. Yet I couldn't stop, couldn't give up Adrian and go back to the numbness of my marriage. I was an addict chasing a high, and I didn't care about the destruction I was causing. The end came in July. Daniel was supposed to be at a work conference in San Francisco. Adrian and I planned a whole weekend together, our first overnight since the affair started. I felt giddy with the freedom of it, the chance to pretend for 48 hours that we were a real couple, with no secrets. We spent Saturday in bed, ordering takeout and watching movies and talking about the future. Adrian said he wanted me to leave Daniel, that we could be together properly, build a life, stop hiding. I can't ask you to blow up your marriage, he said, but Claire, this is real. What we have is real, and I don't want to keep being the secret you hide from your husband. I know, you're right. I just need time to figure out how to tell him, how to end 12 years without completely destroying him. Take the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. We fell asleep tangled together, and for a few hours I let myself believe in the fantasy that this could actually work, that I could leave my marriage and start over with Adrian and somehow everyone would survive. I woke up to my phone ringing, Daniel's name on the screen. My heart stopped. Hey, I answered, trying to sound sleepy and unbothered. Everything okay? Where are you? His voice was flat, cold in a way I'd never heard it before. What? I'm home. Where are you? I thought your flight didn't get in until tonight. I'm standing in our living room, Claire. You're not here. The world tilted. Oh God, your conference was canceled. They sent everyone home Friday afternoon. I tried calling you, but you didn't answer, so I just caught an earlier flight. Got home last night around midnight. A pause. Your car wasn't in the garage. The bed hadn't been slept in. So I'll ask you again. Where are you? My mind raced, searching for a plausible explanation. I'm at Monica's. She had a crisis with her boyfriend and I went over to... Don't lie to me. His voice cracked. Please don't lie to me anymore, just tell me the truth. Silence. I could hear Adrian stirring beside me, could feel the safety of this fantasy crumbling into dust. I'm not at Monica's, I finally said. Are you with someone? The question hung between us. I could lie again, could construct an elaborate story about staying at a hotel because I needed space, or visiting another friend, or any of a dozen explanations that would buy me more time. But I was so tired of lying, so tired of being 2 different people, so tired of everything. Yes, I whispered. I'm with someone. The sound Daniel made wasn't quite a sob, wasn't quite a scream. Just this horrible noise that told me I'd just shattered his entire world. How long? Daniel, how long have you been cheating on me? 4 months. But it's not. It didn't start as... He hung up. I called back immediately. It rang and rang, then went to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. Tried texting. No response. Adrian was fully awake now, sitting up, concern in his eyes. What happened? He knows. Daniel knows. He came home early from his trip and I wasn't there and he knows. Okay, we'll figure this out. Let me drive you home. You can talk to him. Explain what? That I've been hooking up with my coworker for 4 months? That I lied to him every single day? That our entire marriage has been a lie? I was crying now, makeup running down my face, the reality of what I'd done crashing over me in waves. Adrian pulled me close. Claire, breathe. You knew this was going to come out eventually. You were planning to tell him anyway. This just accelerates the timeline. But I hadn't been planning to tell him. Not really. I'd been living in this delusional space where I could somehow have both. Keep my marriage intact while maintaining my affair. Never make a real choice. Never face consequences. Now consequences were all I had. I got dressed in silence, gathered my things. Adrian offered again to come with me, but I said no. This was something I needed to face alone. The drive home felt like driving to my own execution. I played out a dozen different scenarios in my head. Daniel would be devastated, but ultimately forgiving. We'd go to counseling and work through it. Daniel would be furious, throw me out immediately. Daniel would be gone, packed up and left with just a note explaining he couldn't look at me anymore. The reality was worse than any scenario I'd imagined. He was sitting on the couch when I walked in, still wearing yesterday's clothes, eyes red and puffy. On the coffee table in front of him were printed screenshots. Text messages between Adrian and me. The ones I'd been stupid enough to think were private, that I'd never bothered to delete because I didn't think Daniel would ever have reason to look. I went through your phone, he said flatly. I know that's a violation of privacy or whatever, but given the circumstances, I think I'm entitled. I sat down in the chair across from him. Couldn't bring myself to sit next to him on the couch. Daniel, I'm so sorry. Don't, he held up a hand. Don't apologize. Don't give me the "it just happened" speech. I've been sitting here all night reading these messages. I know exactly how long it's been happening and how deliberately you planned it. He picked up one of the screenshots, read from it. I can't stop thinking about Thursday night, the way you touched me. I've never felt this alive. That's you, Claire, writing that to him while I was downstairs making you breakfast. Shame flooded through me. I know how terrible this is. There's no excuse for what I did. You're right, there isn't. He threw the paper down. Was any of it real? Our entire relationship, was any of it real? Or have you just been pretending this whole time? This was the moment I could tell him the truth I'd been hiding for 12 years. Or I could tell him what he wanted to hear, what would hurt less. I chose truth. He deserved at least that. I cared about you, I said carefully. I still care about you. But Daniel, I don't think I was ever in love with you. Not the way you were in love with me. His face went pale. What? I married you because you were safe, because everyone expected us to, because I didn't know how to say no without destroying you. But I was never passionate about you. I was never consumed by you the way you deserved. Tears were streaming down my face. I'm so sorry. You deserved someone who loved you completely, and instead you got someone who was just going through the motions. 12 years. His voice was barely a whisper. We've been together for 12 years. You're telling me you never loved me? Not once? I loved you like a friend, like someone I cared about deeply, but romantic love? The kind of love a wife should have for her husband? No, I don't think I ever did. Daniel stood up abruptly, started pacing. Why didn't you say something? Why did you let it go on this long? Why did you marry me? Because I thought maybe I would learn to love you that way. Because I thought love was supposed to be comfortable and stable. Because I was 24 and stupid and didn't understand what I was signing up for. And this guy, Adrian, You love him? I hesitated. Did I? Or was it just the intensity of the affair, the forbidden nature of it, the contrast to my empty marriage? I don't know, I admitted. Maybe. Or maybe I just love the way he makes me feel. Maybe I'm in love with finally feeling something after years of numbness. Daniel sank back onto the couch, head in his hands. We sat in awful silence for what felt like hours. I want a divorce, he finally said. Okay. I want you to move out, today. Pack whatever you need and go stay with Adrian or your sister or wherever. I don't care. But I can't have you here. Daniel. Don't say my name like that, like you care. If you cared, you wouldn't have been sleeping with someone else for 4 months. You wouldn't have lied to me every single day. You wouldn't have wasted 12 years of my life. He was right. I'd wasted his time, his love, his trust. I'd taken someone good and kind and destroyed him because I was too much of a coward to be honest. I packed 2 suitcases of clothes and essentials. Daniel watched me from the doorway of our bedroom, his bedroom now, not saying anything. When I was done, I stood there looking at him, trying to memorize his face, trying to find something to say that would matter. I really am sorry, I said, for all of it, for not being brave enough to tell you the truth years ago, for letting you believe we had something we didn't, for cheating instead of just leaving. You deserved so much better than me. Yeah, he said quietly. I did. I went to my sister's house. Carla took one look at me and pulled me inside without questions. I told her everything. The affair, the lie of my marriage, Daniel finding out. She listened without judgment, just held me while I cried. What are you going to do now? She asked when I'd calmed down enough to speak coherently. I don't know. Get a divorce, I guess. Figure out my life. Try to become someone I don't completely hate. And Adrian? I don't know about that either. Maybe we'll try to make it work. Maybe this was just an escape fantasy that can't survive in the real world. Adrian called that evening. We talked for an hour and it felt different than before. Without the secrecy, without the forbidden thrill, we were just 2 people trying to figure out what we actually had. Do you want to try this for real? He asked. Us, together, no hiding? I think I need time, I said, to process everything, to figure out who I am outside of a relationship. I've been with Daniel since I was 16. I've never been alone. I understand. Take the time you need. I'll be here. But would he? Would we actually work outside the bubble of an affair? I wasn't sure. And honestly, I needed to figure out myself before I could figure out us. The divorce took 8 months to finalize. Daniel was ruthless in the negotiations, and I let him be. Let him take the house, most of our savings, everything he wanted. It was the least I could do after what I'd put him through. I saw him one last time, at the final court hearing. He looked thinner, older, tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. When our eyes met across the courtroom, there was no love there anymore, just sadness and the ghost of what we'd been. Afterward, his lawyer told mine that Daniel had started dating someone, a woman from his office who'd apparently had a crush on him for years. I hoped she was giving him what I never could, genuine passion, real love, the feeling of being chosen completely. Adrian and I tried dating properly, went out to dinners, met each other's friends, attempted to build something real. But without the intensity of the affair, we fizzled. Turned out we didn't have that much in common when we weren't sneaking around. We ended things amicably after 3 months. I spent the next year alone, really alone, for the first time in my adult life. I got therapy, worked on understanding why I'd made the choices I'd made, learned about people-pleasing and conflict avoidance, and the ways we sabotage our own happiness. My therapist asked me one day, if you could go back to when Daniel proposed, knowing what you know now, what would you say? I'd say no, I answered immediately. I'd tell him I cared about him, but that I wasn't ready, that I needed time to figure out who I was before committing to forever with someone. I'd hurt him then, but it would have been so much less painful than what I eventually did. And if you could tell the 16-year-old Claire anything, I'd tell her it's okay to be alone, that saying yes to someone just because they're nice isn't fair to either of you, that love should feel like more than comfortable companionship. I thought about Daniel often, wondered if he hated me, if he'd forgiven me, if he'd managed to move past what I'd done. Wondered if the woman he was dating had become something serious, if he was building the kind of relationship with her that he should have had with me. 2 years after our divorce was finalized, I got an invitation in the mail. Daniel was getting married to Emily, the woman from his office. The wedding was in 6 months. I stared at that invitation for what felt like forever, trying to decide if it was an apology or a punishment. Maybe both, maybe neither. Maybe it was just him moving on with his life and being enough of an adult to acknowledge that I'd been part of his story, even if it was the worst part. I RSVP'd that I wouldn't be attending, but I sent a gift, an expensive set of kitchen knives he'd always wanted, and I wrote a note, the most honest thing I'd written since my confession. Daniel, I'm so happy you found someone who can love you the way you deserve. Emily is a lucky woman. I'm sorry for the years I stole from you, for the pain I caused, for not being brave enough to be honest earlier. You were always too good for me. I hope your marriage is everything ours wasn't. All my best, Claire. I don't know if he read it, don't know if he kept it or threw it away or showed it to Emily, but I needed to write it, needed to acknowledge out loud that he'd deserved better and had finally found it. My own life slowly came together. I started freelancing, taking on projects that excited me creatively, made new friends who didn't know me as Daniel's wife or Adrian's affair partner, just as Claire. Started dating casually, nothing serious, learning what I actually wanted in a partner versus what I thought I should want. I met someone eventually. His name was Marcus, and he was nothing like Daniel or Adrian. He was a teacher, patient and thoughtful, and he made me laugh. When he told me he loved me after 6 months of dating, I felt it resonate in my chest in a way I'd never experienced. I love you too, I said back, and meant it. Really, truly meant it. You hesitated, he noted gently, before saying it back. I just wanted to be sure. I've said those words before when I didn't mean them, and I never want to do that again. We got married 2 years later. Small ceremony, just close friends and family. Nothing like my wedding to Daniel with its hundreds of guests and elaborate production. This time, when I said my vows, I meant every word. I'd like to say there's no guilt anymore, that I've forgiven myself for the pain I caused, but that would be a lie. I carry it with me still. The knowledge of what I did to Daniel, how I wasted years of his life, how I betrayed someone who trusted me completely. That weight doesn't disappear just because time passes or because I found happiness elsewhere, but I've learned to live with it, to acknowledge that I made terrible choices while also recognizing that I've become someone different, someone more honest, someone more aware of the cost of living a lie. I saw Daniel once, 3 years into my marriage with Marcus. We ran into each other at a coffee shop downtown. He was with his wife, Emily, and a toddler I assumed was their daughter. Claire, he said, surprise in his voice. Hi, Daniel, Emily. I smiled at them both. Congratulations on the baby, she's beautiful. Thank you, her name's Sophia. Daniel looked different, happier, more settled. The haunted look he'd had during our divorce was gone. How have you been? Good, really good actually. I got remarried a few years ago. I heard, I'm glad you're happy. We stood there in awkward silence, all the years and pain between us. Then Emily touched Daniel's arm gently, and something passed between them. An understanding, a connection, the kind of intimate communication that comes from real partnership. We should get going, Emily said. But it was nice seeing you, Claire. You too. I watched them leave, Daniel's arm around his wife, both of them focused on their daughter, and I felt something settle in my chest. He was okay. He'd survived what I'd done to him and built something real with someone else. He'd found his happy ending, even if I wasn't part of it. That's the thing about betrayal. The wounds heal eventually, though they leave scars. People move on, build new lives, find new loves. But the person who did the betraying carries it differently. They carry the knowledge of who they're capable of being at their worst, of the pain they're capable of causing. I betrayed my first love, my husband, the man who'd given me 12 years of devotion. I lied to him about the most fundamental thing, whether I loved him. And when those lies weren't enough, I cheated on him, chose someone else, destroyed him in every way possible. That's my truth, my confession. The biggest lie I ever told was, I do. And I spent 12 years compounding that lie with 1,000 smaller ones until it all came crashing down. I'm not proud of who I was, but I'm trying every day to be someone better, someone honest, someone who faces hard truths instead of running from them, someone who understands that love should be real and passionate and chosen deliberately, not just accepted because it's convenient. He was my first love, my husband, and my biggest lie. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them go find someone who will love them the way they deserve. Even if it takes breaking both your hearts to get there.